Hey guys, and welcome to my hopefully constructive STAMSORC rant in Murkmire. In this video we're going to take a look at STAMSORC and discuss why STAMSORC is so much weaker in comparison to the other classes, the other STAM classes obviously. And I'm going to be diving into the skills, the passives, what STAMSORC is missing in comparison to the other classes, and how zenimax could fix STAMSORC, because we haven't seen any changes. We have only been seeing nerfs that are actually unjustified, in my opinion, but we're just going to roll with it and see what we can make happen here. Alright, so first off we're going to talk about skills, and when it comes down to it, from the 15 skills and 3 ults, STAMSORC can use only 5 ults. Five skills that make sense to use on STAMSORC, and that is Hurricane, Surge, Streak, Dark Deal, and Bound Armaments. If you count ults, you can use Absorption Field or Negate. However, this skill only makes sense if you're playing with the group, so I'm not including this in this video. Also, notice that I'm talking about this from a PvP perspective. I'm mostly a PvPer. I've been playing STAMSORC since my beginning of the game, and yeah, let's just see. Alright, so all of these skills are what STAMSORC can use. The other skills are more or less completely useless for STAMSORC, and not usable. So let's go over the skills we have, which are good. So Hurricane is the best armor buff in the game, and I understand that this is the best armor buff in the game, and it's good. It's definitely good. We have critsurge, and Dark Deal are both good skills. They are, however, a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that if you play no CP, these heals do not scale with your weapon damage or your CPs, meaning there will always be the same amount of strength. However, if you are playing in CP, these will not scale with your CP unless you put points into Blessed, which are, in my opinion, more or less wasted if you're playing STAMSORC. The other thing is critsurge obviously doesn't scale with your CP. However, you do get more crit if you are playing with champion points, which makes critsurge more or less weak in no CP. Alright, the next one is Streak. Streak is obviously the one thing that makes STAMSORC in my opinion, because especially open world, this gives you a pretty good amount of mobility. However, the big problem with this is that on a stamina sorcerer you cannot spam it, unless you are heavily spec'd into magicka, which I would not recommend. And magicka Sorc can abuse the absolute hell out of Streak, because they can just streak forever and then Dark Deal themselves back up. STAMSORC cannot do that. STAMSORC can only streak once or twice, at the cost of a lot of magicka they need to use to keep up their Dark Deals and their critsurge. Next is Bound Armament. Bound Armament is, I hate the skill with a passion, and the reason for that is that the skill you only slot it for the passive that it gives, and the passive that it gives is pretty unique. However, it should be just part of the passive sorcerer has by default. Like the 8% more stam and the 11% more light attack damage will not make or break STAMSORC or magicka sorcerer in PvE or PvP if they just put it in a passive. And especially STAMSORC has very few passives they can use. I will talk about this after we're talking about... Actually, we're talking about this next. Okay. So, not a good skill in my opinion. Not a good skill in my opinion. It has basically no use in a fight. The active ability and the passive ability only works good if you are running this together with a sword board, for example. But now let's go into passives. So overall, Sorc has 12 passives, and they can only use 6 of them. They can use the cost reduction. However, cost reduction doesn't really mean anything to a STAMSORC because the skills we are using are mostly magicka and extremely expensive, and we don't get the magicka cost reduction from light armor that magicka sorcerer does. So these are hard to play with on a STAMSORC, but it's better than nothing, and it's good, especially because it goes for the other skills as well if we use dizzy swing or anything like that. Next off, blood magic, useless for STAMSORC. You can't use it because you don't have anything to really hit your enemy with. Persistence is good because this is actually a unique passive that gives you cost reduction after you block. However, the problem is you have to block for it. Block costs a decent amount unless you're playing sword and board. And if you're playing sword and board and you block, you're cutting off your regeneration. And yeah, so that's a problem. But it's not bad. It's something nice to have because you have to block either way if you're playing sword and board or not. And that helps. So next up, getting minor prophecy after using Dark Deal. I don't blame zenimax for this one because the thing with the classes is every class has a minor buff they can give the group they are in, and it just happens that minor prophecy is the one for STAMSORC. What would be more beneficial though would be minor savagery, because we are actually striving off of crit because we use critsurge for our healing mostly. Okay, let's go to Daedric, and most of these skills are here completely useless. There's actually the only skill you can really use is the passive that gives you 15% ult reduction. However, compared to the other classes, this is still not as good because every class has a passive that helps them with their ult sustain. Wardens have their Shimmering Shield, Major Heroism, and they get ult when they use their pets. Their pets like the Subterranean or the birds or their bear. And yeah, Nightbaits have the potion passive that gives them more than 20% of their ult if you're using incap. And Dragon Knight has better with Dragon Knight you more or less build for ult sustain either way because you're using your ults to sustain. And your on Templar you actually have a passive as well that gives you back ult, and you have access to cheaper ults than STAMSORC has. Next off is the actually it wasn't done, so sorry. The next one is the Daedric Ward, or whatever it's called in English. However, this skill is this passive is extremely problematic because STAMSORC has almost no benefit from it because you have to slot a useless skill on your bar to get it. Bound armaments are actively useless. I already talked about that. It only works great with sword and board because you get the light attack ransack bash combo. Greater Atronach, you don't want to. You can maybe slot this as a backbar ult, but you will have more value if you're slotting the Psijic order or the werewolf ult from it. And yeah, so this one problematic, especially because magicka sorcerers have easy access to it because they are either they are bound to have their shield slotted or the curse. And the last one, again, last passive, useless because we don't use any pets on this build, gimping us with the 8% max health, so we can't get access to that unless we use Atro, which is kind of useless. Alright, last one, get more magicka regen. It's okay, you can't really stake magicka regen on a STAMSORC above 1k. What I've seen a lot of people play in the past and still is Prisoner's Rags, but still you're not gonna use a lot of magicka regen, even though magicka regen is key for STAMSORC. Like, you're gonna push your magicka regen to 1k, that's good. So this is a good passive even for STAMSORC. Next skill, the increases of your physical and shock damage. I don't like this passive really. It's not bad at all. However, all your dot damage you are gonna do is not increased by this passive, and that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. Like, all your bleeds and stuff not gonna get increased with this, and I think poison injection also doesn't get increased. Implosion, this is subject to change, so I'm not going to talk about this. We'll have to check it out after the patch. In this patch, it's kind of hard to actually kill anything with STAMSORC. Like, if you're playing against decent players with good setups, implosion is what will kill them most of the time. Like, I'm able a lot of time to play players low to 25% or even lower, but then they're just going to put up their block and heal, and that's a problem. So maybe it's going to help because we can burst them down quicker with the Dawnbreaker, so we are not as reliant on the Dawnbreaker dot after the Dawnbreaker to kill them, and we can burst quick before they can heal. But this will we'll have to see about this, how it's going to change out. And the last one is also a pretty bad passive for STAMSORC, that is, and that is the Magic Expert. And the problem is it looks good because it looks like you can amp your weapon and spell damage if you use sorcerer abilities. However, all the sorcerer's abilities you have are not gonna be on your main damage bar. All the ones you see here are mostly going to be placed on your back bar to kite people and try to regain control of the fight. They're not gonna be on the bar you are gonna use to burst your enemy and kill your opponents. So this is useless as well. It's maybe nice on your back bar if you have vigor slotted on your back bar, but how am I gonna say this? Yeah, it's just not worth it. Like, this could be so much better than on STAMSORC. If, like, what would be, for example, nice, that would change it too, is if this would increase your weapon and spell damage if you have weapon abilities slotted, because STAMSORC and Magicka Sorcerer have both have to use Magicka abilities, have both to use abilities from the weapon classes. Right, so these are the passives, and as you can see, a lot of them are useless for STAMSORC. They don't have access to them, especially because the ults changed. The ult changes to overload. Before you could switch. Before you could put a few skills on your front line to gain access to more of these abilities, because you could put the other abilities you definitely need in your on your build to put them on the overload bar. However, since the overload is changed and it doesn't do any damage and it doesn't help you sustain, it's just a bad skill for STAMSORC to use now. Before, overload bar, I absolutely loved it. It was great. It made STAMSORC. That took it out. I am crying still. Alright, so now that we talked about this, let's talk about synergies. We are obviously gonna put out Bound Armaments, and let's now talk about the problem we have to face as a STAMSORC. And the problem is, firstly, roots and snares. You need two things on a STAMSORC by default, and one is obviously vigor. You need vigor, and the other one is you need snare remove. If you run medium armor, you obviously are not as tanky. You're missing out on the health regen, which does stack in your passives, so if you are gonna go that route. And if we don't use medium armor and use heavy, we can't use shuffle, and we are forced more or less to use 2H. And yeah, so we're gonna have at least one skill on our skill bar. I'm playing medium, so I'm using shuffle. We are forced to use this skill as well. So now that leaves us with all back bar with no offensive skills, and all of the sorcerer skills we are using are mostly magicka. We have critsurge, dark dealer, and streak. All of these are magicka, and then we have hurricane. Hurricane, short duration, high cost. I think the cost reduction on this could be a bit more. So like if this would go down to 2.5 or so, that would be great, because you have to keep this up 100% of the time to make anything happen, and it's just a really expensive skill. Alright, so now we are already forced on 2H for the snare remove or medium armor. So that's a big problem. Most people play 2H. I don't. I'm gonna put this build out I'm running on my STAMSORC currently in a bit. The one I'm running is actually pretty viable. It's not breaking any metas, but it's definitely a good build. But yeah, I've yet to see a STAMSORC open world other than me running 2H. I haven't been able to see one without this in years, actually. Okay, so we're running 2H, and if we're running 2H, we're gonna run heavy armor, because forward momentum is just too good in comparison to shuffle. That already means that we have to use on 2H either dizzy swing, or we are gonna use a backbar, a different backbar weapon then that has a good spammable. And I personally say dizzy swing was one of the best skills in the past for STAMSORC, because STAMSORC has the high mobility. However, in this current patch, everything is so slow. Trying to hit your dizzy swing is a pain in the and you will most likely not be able to do it against good players. Like, you will get, first time it will get dodged, second time it will get blocked, third time you are rooted, you can't hit it, and fourth time you're getting stunned, and then it's just rinse and repeat. So the only skills we can use from this tree mostly are reverse slice and forward momentum. The other ones you can use more or less, but they're dealing not a lot of damage now. The bleed from carve cleave is fine, but it's not good on STAMSORC, because we need upfront damage. We don't have the time on STAMSORC to just bleed someone to death, because we have to kite to stay alive. So now there are two things we can do. We can play bow and try to snipe them down, or we can play dual wield or swordboard. If we play dual wield, we already have the problem that we are missing out on a stun. Now you say, yeah, you can use the Sorc stun. However, the Sorc stun is pretty unreliable, in my opinion. It costs a ton of magicka, and it's not hard hitting at all. So yeah, you're most likely gonna have to kill, if you want to kill someone, you're gonna have to either use the Dawnbreaker or Dawnbreaker stun, or you need to do something like a Ballist bow ult and then streak through them or something like that. It's hard though. Now, if we run Swordboard, we are losing out on a lot of pressure. So Swordboard is actually the best, in my opinion, one of the best choices for STAMSORC, because there are a lot of good skills. We have access to a stun for reverb. I was digging around with the skills a little bit and tried out the other morph. But reverb is actually really good for STAMSORC. So we already have to put on a lot of skills on our back bar now, since we're gonna have to use these on the front bar. Okay, so now let's talk. So we obviously talked about dual wield Now we're going to talk about Sword and Board, and now we're going to talk about why Sword and Board is comparatively weaker on STAMSORC than it is on STAMDK or STAMWarden. And the reason is major fracture. STAMSORC have no inherent way to gain major fracture, unlike all other classes. We can get it through a set, Night Mother's Gaze, and I'm actually using that, but you have to sacrifice a whole set for it. Meanwhile, STAMDK, they're putting their Noxious Breath on you, or Warden, or they're gonna Subterranean you, or Stamina Nightblade, they're just gonna use the surprise attack. Now you're saying, well, Stamplar doesn't have it, but Stamplar has Minor Fracture on their Power of the Light, and Power of the Light is a timeable burst, which is so strong, I can't even tell you. STAMSORC has nothing in comparison to that, and so the other classes can use Heroic Slash, which has a lot of other really good bonuses to help them out, but STAMSORC has to use the Pierce Armor for the penetration. You don't have to, obviously, but it's like the damage you do if you use Heroic Slash without the Major Fracture, like Pierce Armor or Ransack hits the same amount of damage as Heroic Slash does without the Major Fracture. So it is more beneficial for the STAMSORC to go Pierce Armor, and it is pretty good. So now we have access to a debuff and a stun. And now this is the only way I see to incorporate bound armaments, is to use it with Swordboard, because you do the light attack ransack bash combo, and you need the extra light attack damage, and you get the 8% more stamina, which pairs well with your shield, with a stamina glyph on your shield. But it is still a dead skill slot. You're only using it for the passives. You don't use it for your defense, like, because now I'm running medium armor at the moment, by the way. The 2.7k cost of this ability is just too ridiculous to work with. Okay, so now we have the STAMSORC setup, okay? Obviously, if you're running the bound armaments in the 1 bar, you either want to run it on the back bar as well, or you want to run the 8 row. The 8 row, now, again, is a wasted skill slot. Like, you could have a defensive ult here, but then you're missing out on the extra regen on the back bar. You can do that, and can put your Dawnbreaker on the back bar, and your Sword and Board on the front bar. But that means that if you are done, like if you start to pressure your enemy with the reverb and the pierce armor, you get you get them low. You need to bar swap first, then maybe Dawnbreaker them, and then execute them, and it takes a lot of time. Like it's not that this playstyle doesn't work, but if you see, like, if you followed my train of thought now on how to build a STAMSORC, you will see how I got forced into this this playstyle by what we have and what we can do, and that's the main issue. So we talked about how they compare to other classes, with ult gen, with access to their passive, with the access to major fracture. STAMSORC is a class that thrives of crit, maximum crit, because of critsurge and hurricane. Yet we don't have any crit bonus. We don't have access to minor force, minor savagery, major savagery, anything like that. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem, because we have to get these from somewhere else to make it work at all, and then we are losing out again on other things. Meanwhile, Stamplar just jabs you and they get the Major Savagery, pairing well with their critical hit bonus and their passives. The Stamina Nightblade, they get minor crit bonus. They get free crit from stealth, and they get the extra crit damage. And STAMSORC just doesn't have any of that, and we don't have any. Yeah, we don't have really anything that is standing out compared to the other classes. That's what makes it so problematic. Okay, so this is the portion where I'm talking about the issues of the STAMSORC, and now we are going to talk about how we could fix STAMSORC and make it more viable, because I really don't like that we got forced into this playstyle we are currently having here, that I put together, and I'm going to give a few suggestions on how we could make STAMSORC viable by basically using that skill slot and that passives we have. All right, so when we look at the skills we have for STAMSORC class, I don't mind the olds. I really miss the old Overload, but I can understand that they changed it to make it more intuitive for everyone, usually, normally. What I would like though is if we get Overload, couldn't we get a Stam version for it with physical damage instead of shock damage? Because as it is, we can't even use it for damage, really. Like, I tried it, and the Overload attacks deal this basically the same amount of damage a normal light attack does. On the STAMSORC doesn't work. Stam Atro would be great. And Negate is fine. I don't care about that. Negate is good. It's good for team play. That's fine. Alright, so now for the normal skills. And there are a few skills that are just completely underperforming for everything. Like they're not getting used on magicka Sorc or stamina Sorc in any kind of way. Alright, so the first one is the frag. And I'm not talking about the frag morph that gives you the increased damage and that gives you the instant proc. I'm talking about the frag that stuns you. There was a very, very niche use for the frag that stunned you last patch when we had the old Overload, because you could hardcast the stunning frag and instantly use 1 or 2 overloads to gank your opponent. But even that gank style is now not viable anymore because the damage got nerfed. So now we have the crystal shard that stuns you, has a cast time, but no one's using because it's, to be honest, it's a bad skill. And as a stun, it's worse than Rune Cage. Alright, so what could we do with the skill? Actually, let's continue and go back to what we could do after that. Then we have Daedric Mines. Daedric Mines are extremely expensive and they are not really used anymore. They were once used on the Overload bar, and I think now they're only used basically if you're dueling on a magicka Sorc. And yeah, reason for that is that they're super expensive. They have no immediate impact. Only when you are when there's an enemy really trying to get close to you. That's fine though. Like, I don't care for the morph that has 5 mines, because that you can still use in a group environment. If you're farming at a resource and you need to barricade the doors, that's fine. However, the other morph that shoots out the 3 mines that instantly arm, no one's using that to any great effect. Like, they still take a second to arm because of the travel time they have, and once they're armed, no one's gonna step into them. And if you're barricading a door with them, you can still just use the Daedric Mines, the other morph. Alright, so one useless morph no one uses, another useless morph no one uses. Rune Cage, the other morph, it's still good. the gank defense it gave was great when you could put it on your overload bar. I actually did that when I was low CP and was getting constantly ganked in Cyrodiil. I used to slot the Daedrake prison when I was I was going to get ganked. I would just put it on and then they couldn't gank me. But now it's not very useful anymore. Everyone is using Rune Cage. But I think it's a fine skill. It's a unique skill. It's okay. Don't need to put it out of the game. Alright, next. Oh my god. The unstable clan Claban or Clan Fear. Damn, this skill is just so bad. I saw the cost reduction they gave like a few patches ago or so. Doesn't matter, still bad skill. The only one I can see using the skill is tanks, and I think even then it's not worth it because you use 5,000 5,000 magicka to cast this skill, and you're obviously not gonna use medium light armor when you play this this pet. Completely useless. What would be nice? Actually, I forgot. Let's just continue. Okay, so next one is bound armaments. Please just give us an actually useful active ability on this. Like block cost reduction for 3,000 stam? Are you kidding me? Oh, I'm gonna block now, so I'm gonna use 3,000 stamina to block and then have no regen at the time and use my stam for blocking? Yes. So yeah, I really don't like the skill. Needs a rework again. It's even worse than before, in my opinion. Stormcalling, no beef here. They're fine. Just the overload thing. Alright, so now we've talked about the useless skill slots we have, and now let's talk about how to fix them. Alright, so crystal shards, the stunning morph, just make it a stam. Just make it a stam skill. Like a crystal sword that has melee range, that can proc like the frag. That would be so good. You could even, like, if you remember, the old frags were really OP because they stunned you. And the reason they were OP was because you could shoot them across the map and stun people with them. You can't do this anymore because it was ridiculous. But what if you would actually make the skill the same as before, but you would make it melee based? Then Stamina Sorc would have access to a stun and a combo ability to use with different kind of playstyles. It would be great. I'm going to talk about more ideas later, but this would be cool. Alright, so Daedric Mines. The one morph with the 3 they shoot out. I don't know, like, what you could do is you could make it something like Trap Beast. Something that amps your crit by if someone steps in it. It would be conditional, but it would fit great into the playstyle with kiting. Because you could streak, put a trap down, dark deal around the corner, you see someone walk into that trap, you know, now I have minor force or major savagery, now I can go to town on him. Would be good. Also because if it is a root, a hard-hitting root, it would help a lot with dual wield if STAMSORCs were supposed to use dual wield and not abuse the absolute crap out of Master's dual wield. Alright. Next up, bound armaments. Just give me something here. Maybe snare immunity for 4 seconds. That would be honestly enough to make this skill good. That would be enough. Yeah. That's it. For passives, just give us access to our passives, man. Like the Daedrake ward, or the passive that gives you the health and stam regen, just make it viable. I don't know why you would hide it behind the fact that you have to slot something. I mean, Magicka Sorc gets it by default because they use the curse and they use the ward in PvE and PvP, and STAMSORC needs this more than anything. And yeah. Alright, so that's one. The other one was Minor Prophecy, it's fine. This passive would be fine if we get a change to the Crystal Frag. That would be great. The one that gives you 10% of your health. So you would hit someone with a crystal sword, and then you get a little bit of health back. It's not much. It's like if you have 24k health, you get 1,200 health back. It's fine. Yeah, Implosion obviously gets changed. And yeah, the rest is actually okay. This skill here, the Magic Expert, I think they could make it cool if they would make it so it would give us more weapon damage or spell damage if you use weapon abilities. Because STAMSORC uses weapon abilities, MagSorc uses weapon abilities, and no other class has a bonus like that. And it would maybe even work great with Orc, because I think Orc gets more damage on their weapon abilities as well next patch. Yeah, so there you have it. These are my thoughts on Stamina Sorcerer this patch and why they are comparatively weaker than the other Stam classes. I think I gave you a good amount of insight. Please leave your comments below and just yeah, leave your ideas there. Maybe you disagree with something I said, but I think I made myself pretty clear on most of the stuff that makes STAMSORC weaker. Yeah, I wish you a good day, and I hope to catch you next time. So yeah, I'm sorry that it kept on for so long, but honestly there's so much to talk about with STAMSORC. Yeah, so this video is just a bit longer, but that's, I think, okay. See you guys, bye bye.